If people only listen to you because they're afraid of your reaction, you are not leading them. You are controlling them. And fear might make people quiet for a while, but it will never make them respect you. Some men think they are leaders because everyone around them walks carefully. Their wife measures every word, their children hide their mistakes, or friends avoid certain subjects. The whole room adjusts itself around their mood, and they mistake that for authority. But that is not leadership. That is emotional terrorism with a masculine label on it. This is episode 2 of our 3-part series on toxic masculinity. Let me say this clearly again. This series is not about attacking men. This is not about making masculinity look evil. This is not about telling men to become weak, passive, soft, or ashamed of being men. This series is about separating real masculinity from immature masculinity. Real masculinity builds. Real masculinity protects. Real masculinity leads. Real masculinity serves. Real masculinity takes responsibility. But toxic masculinity performs. It controls. It hides behind ego. It demands respect without earning trust. And today, we're dealing with one of the biggest lies some men believe, that control is the same thing as leadership. This is episode 2. Control is not leadership. Let's get straight to it. Control is not leadership. Control is what insecure people use when they do not know how to influence with character. Leadership creates direction. Control creates tension. Leadership gives people safety. Control makes people shrink. Leadership builds trust. Control builds fear. And the dangerous part is that from the outside, both can look powerful for a little while. A controlling man may get obedience. He may get silence. He may get people moving when he speaks. He may get his way in the moment. But what he does not get is real respect. What he does not get is loyalty from the heart. What he does not get is peace in his home. What he does not get is the confidence of people who feel safe enough to tell him the truth. Because fear can force compliance, but it cannot create connection. A man who has to dominate every conversation is not leading, he's compensating. A man who has to win every argument is not leading. He is protecting his ego. A man who has to make everyone feel small so he can feel big is not leading. He is revealing how small he feels inside. And a man who confuses intimidation with authority does not understand leadership at all. Think about a shepherd and a tyrant. A shepherd leads with direction. He knows where the flock needs to go. He protects them from danger. He walks with awareness. He does not destroy the sheep to prove he is in charge. A tyrant, on the other hand, drives people by fear. He swings the rod not to protect but to threaten. He demands movement, but he never earns trust. Both may get people moving, but only one creates safety. That is the difference between leadership and control. Some men want to be called leaders, but their presence creates anxiety. Their house may be in order on the outside, but inside, people are tense. Conversations are filtered. Feelings are hidden. Problems are covered up. Mistakes are buried. Why? Because everybody knows that truth comes with a price. When truth comes with a price, people stop bringing you truth. That is how families break silently. That is how marriages become roommates. That is how children become strangers. That is how friendships turn shallow. Not always through one big explosion, but through years of people learning. I cannot be honest with him. A lot of men do not understand that being the head does not mean being heavy-handed. Being the head means carrying weight. It means responsibility comes to you first. It means you set the temperature. It means you bring stability, not chaos. It means people should feel safer because you are present, not more nervous because you walked in. If your wife has to become smaller for you to feel respected, that is not leadership. If your children have to hide their honest emotions because they are afraid of your reaction, that is not leadership. If people around you constantly have to manage your mood, that is not leadership. That is immaturity sitting in the seat of authority. A real leader does not need to crush people to create order. He carries enough internal order that his presence brings order into the room. He does not have to yell every time something goes wrong. He does not have to threaten every time he feels disrespected. He does not have to control every detail to prove he matters. His strength is not frantic. His strength is steady. That is what a lot of men are missing: steadiness. They have volume, but no steadiness. They have opinions, but no wisdom. They have demands, but no example. They have authority and position, but no authority and character. And that is why the people closest to them may obey them in public, but resent them in private. Because people can feel when your leadership is really just fear dressed up as confidence. Control is usually born from fear. Fear of being ignored. Fear of being disrespected. Fear of losing power. Fear of being exposed. Fear that if you do not force everything, nothing will go your way. But that means control is not strength. Control is insecurity, trying to manage the world so it never has to feel vulnerable. Imagine a man gripping sand in his fist. The tighter he squeezes, the more sand slips through his fingers. That is control. The more you try to force people to stay close, the more they emotionally pull away. The more you demand respect, the less people respect you internally. The more you punish honesty, the more people lie to protect themselves from your reaction. Control does not create loyalty, it creates survival strategies. That is why controlling men often feel betrayed later. They say, "Why didn't they tell me?" They say, "Why did they pull away?" They say, "Why did they stop opening up?" They say, "Why does nobody appreciate everything I do?" But the hard truth is this: sometimes people stopped opening up because every time they tried, you made it unsafe. You cannot keep setting fires in the room and then complain that people keep standing near the exit. That is a word right there. Some men create the very distance they complain about. They create the silence, then call it disrespect. They create fear, then call it order. Create emotional distance, then blame everyone else for being cold. But if people constantly feel like they have to protect themselves from your reactions, eventually they will protect themselves by giving you less access to them. And you may still have the title, husband, father, leader, head of, household, boss, friend, mentor. But a title without trust is a hollow crown. A crown does not make a man a king if he has no character to carry it. That is the problem with toxic masculinity. It wants the crown without the character. It wants the authority without the service. It wants the respect without the responsibility. It wants the benefits of leadership without the burden of becoming someone worth following. But real leadership is not about being served first. It's about taking responsibility first. A real leader asks, "What am I bringing into this room?" A controlling man asks, "Why won't everyone adjust to me?" A real leader asks, "How can I bring clarity?" A controlling man asks, "How can I get my way?" A real leader asks, "How do I protect what has been trusted to me?" A controlling man asks, "How do I protect my ego?" That is the dividing line. Leadership is not about having the loudest voice. Leadership is about having the clearest responsibility. It is not about making everyone afraid to challenge you. It is about being secure enough to be challenged and mature enough to respond with wisdom. If you fall apart every time someone questions you, you are not leading from strength. You are leading from fragility. If your whole identity is threatened by a different opinion, you are not confident. You are insecure. If you cannot listen without preparing a comeback, you are not communicating. You are defending an image. And let me say this directly. If your leadership cannot survive accountability, it is not leadership. It is control. Real leaders can be corrected. Real leaders can listen. Real leaders can apologize. Real leaders can admit when they were wrong. Real leaders can change direction when truth demands it. They do not lose authority because they are humble. They gain trust because they are honest. Some men think apologizing makes them look weak. No, refusing to apologize when you know you were wrong makes you look immature. Some men think listening makes them look soft. No, listening shows enough strength to not be ruled by insecurity. Some men think kindness weakens authority. No, kindness gives authority credibility when firmness is required. Because a man who is always harsh eventually loses the power of his firmness. People stop hearing leadership. They just hear noise. Imagine a hammer being used for everything. A hammer can build, but if you use it on everything, it destroys. You cannot fix glass with a hammer. You cannot tune an instrument with a hammer. You cannot heal a wound with a hammer. But some men only have one tool emotionally: force. Every issue gets the hammer. Every conversation gets the hammer. Every mistake gets the hammer. Every correction gets the hammer. And then they wonder why everything around them is broken. A real man develops more than one tool. He knows when to be firm and when to be gentle. He knows when to speak and when to listen. He knows when to correct and when to comfort. He knows when to stand his ground and when to admit he was wrong. That is maturity. That is leadership. Control is easy. Leadership is heavy. Control reacts. Leadership responds. Control demands. Leadership demonstrates. Control threatens. Leadership teaches. Control protects ego. Leadership protects people. And if you are going to call yourself a man, especially a man who wants to lead, you have to ask yourself honestly, do people follow you because they trust you or because they do not want to deal with your reaction? That question will expose a lot, because some men are surrounded by people who are physically present but emotionally gone. Their family is there, but the warmth is gone. Their friends are there, but the honesty is gone. Their children are there, but the openness is gone. Their wife is there, but the trust is damaged. And instead of asking, what did my behavior create? They ask, why is everybody acting different? Sometimes they are acting different because they are tired. Tired of being controlled. Tired of being corrected without being heard. Tired of your mood ruling the room. Tired of your pride turning every conversation into a battle. Tired of never knowing whether they are going to get the calm version of you or the explosive version of you. And no, this does not mean a man should have no boundaries. This does not mean a man should be passive. This does not mean a man should let disrespect run wild. Leadership still requires firmness. Leadership still requires standards. Leadership still requires correction. But correction without love becomes cruelty. Standards without humility become hypocrisy. Authority without service becomes tyranny. Real masculinity knows the difference. Real masculinity is not afraid to lead, but it is also not afraid to serve. It is not afraid to be firm, but it refuses to be abusive. It is not afraid to set boundaries, but it does not use boundaries as weapons. It is not afraid to carry authority, but it understands that authority is supposed to protect, not feed the ego. That is why control is such a cheap counterfeit of leadership. It gives weak men the feeling of power without requiring the discipline of character. But counterfeit money eventually gets exposed when pressure tests it. Fake leadership eventually gets exposed when trust is required. And if people do not trust your heart, they will eventually stop following your voice. So here's the challenge. Stop asking, why don't people respect me? And start asking, do people feel safe being honest with me? Stop asking, why won't they listen? Start asking, have I earned trust with consistency? Stop asking, why does everyone challenge me? And start asking, is my leadership worth following? This week, I want you to examine your need for control. Where does it show up? In your marriage, in your parenting, your friendships, in your workplace, in your conversations, your tone, in your reactions, in the way you handle disagreement. Pick one area where you have been confusing control with leadership and confront it honestly. If you have been using anger to get your way, stop. If you have been using silence to punish people, stop. If you have been using intimidation to demand respect, stop. If you have been refusing to listen because your ego cannot handle correction, stop. If people close to you cannot be honest without fearing your reaction, that is not their weakness. That is your responsibility to fix. A real man does not need everyone afraid of him. A real man becomes someone people can trust under pressure. A real man does not just demand respect, he lives in a way that makes respect reasonable, and that starts with self-control. Because if you cannot lead yourself, you are not ready to lead anybody else. If this message challenged you, do not just let it pass. Sit with it. Be honest. Comment below and tell me this. What is the biggest difference between control and real leadership? Or if you are honest enough, where have you seen control show up in your own life? Like this video if it made you think. Share it with someone who needs this message. Not to tear them down, but to call them higher. And most of all, subscribe. We are pushing toward 1,000 subscribers. This channel is built for men and people who are serious about growth, responsibility, discipline, and truth. This is the Ordinary Guy 2.0. Responsibility before ego. See you next time.